All right, so I did my project, excuse me, on personal analytics. So I think we all know pretty well what like big data is and business analytics are, but I really wanted to focus on personal analytics. And really what that is it's kind of like differentiating the use case, right? So personal analytics applies to basically you're using data to make personal decisions or to guide kind of your individual behavior, as opposed to kind of business analytics, which is going to be feeding into a business decision or a business outcome. So I just wanted to take you through like one quick example of that. These are kind of like the broad steps for any analytics decision outcome or product. So you would have creation and capture of the data, acquisition of that data, some kind of transformation or analysis, an output and visualization, and then that would go to the end user. So one example is user uploads health info. Okay. Next, that data could be stored on a server. A recommendation could be made as to an outcome, and then that outcome could be presented in some kind of visual format. So up to this stage, whether we're talking about a business application or a personal application, it's really the same steps. It actually could be the same exact data. But that data could be used either to help a user determine a treatment or to adjust the hospital's demand forecast. So basically two very different applications for the same piece of data. So some kind of broad applications for personal analytics would be something like memory augmentation. And I know I suffer from not a very good memory when it comes to certain things. So things like you could say like TripIt, right, which will store your travel information, when your flight is departing and send you reminders. Could be something that falls into that bucket. Another one is personal decision making, or something like self-improvement. So you could think of your Fitbit or something that's tracking your activity. And I won't go through the business analytics side. I think we all kind of know some examples there. So kind of one extreme example that dates back to like the 90s is Stephen Wolfram, who's actually the founder of Wolfram Alpha and also Informatica. So he kind of, for the past 20 years, has been logging all the keystrokes on his computer. He has a camera set up in his room which kind of monitors where he walks around and kind of all of his activity. And he found kind of over the years that tracking this information was able to make him, or led to several decisions that he's made. So one kind of interesting example here is this plot shows all of his email activity over since 1990, and you can see that like the red dots are when he's sending or receiving an email. And he made an abrupt change in 2002. The white area is basically where he's sleeping. So in 2002, he saw that his sleep patterns were like varying pretty widely. So he decided, okay, I'm going to sleep at this certain time and wake up at this certain time every day. So you can see how that kind of helped him to guide that decision. But this is kind of an extreme example because he took the time to build this solution himself. I don't think kind of the majority of us would actually go about doing something like that. So I took a look at where personal analytics appeared within products that we use and exist as standalone products. And the majority of the time, like a personal analytics solution will be embedded within a product. So you could think of like a credit card report showing your transactions and how much do you spend on restaurants versus travel, etc. And so typically these products will be either a complementary to another product, or it'll be kind of trying to upsell you on a further product. So on the left side here I have a bunch of different really personal analytics features or products, and on the top it's really how they're monetizing that piece. So I basically classified it into these kind of 7 different categories. You could have the direct sale of a device or software, so something like a Nest, right? You're actually selling a piece of hardware to generate that revenue. Direct sale of a personalized product or service. So this is something that I see kind of coming in the future, where you would basically use that personal data to generate a custom product for an individual person. And one area we're seeing that right now is in kind of healthcare. So there's one, I wasn't really able to find too many examples, but this one called Vitamin. Basically you fill out a survey and it'll tailor a specific vitamin regimen to you, which will kind of fit your lifestyle and your needs. Another one, upselling or cross-selling. So we can think of Amazon recommendations, right? It's using your historical data to recommend products for you to buy in the future. freemium, so something like Trip that I mentioned, where basically you have a free analytics service, and then if you want a premium version, you can pay extra for that. Something that complements the core product. So I think this is kind of one of the most popular ones. We can think of like Netflix recommendations, right? So it's using your past Netflix behavior, and really the recommendation service is a key aspect of that product. Or something like Spotify or Pandora Radio. So then we get to targeted advertising for third-party products. So something like Facebook ads based on your individual Facebook data. Or commission on third-party products. This kind of goes along with the advertising theme. So, you would basically get recommended to another third-party seller to buy a product. So we can see that like these personal analytics products, I think the most common way to think about them is a complementer to an existing business, something that's going to help you kind of interact with that business more thoroughly and get more engaged within their business. But I think, kind of looking into the future, we're going to see more products on the direct sale or direct sale of personalized products side. So we can see like kind of some of the ones on the left there are more recent. So something like Fitbit or Automatic or Nest. So these are actual devices and pieces of hardware that are being sold with the intention of basically using that personal data as a product, which the end customer will value. So, I mean, there's obviously several issues that come out of this. First one I want to talk to you about briefly is dictatorship of the data. So, we can receive all of this data and we can kind of believe it for what it is. But if we look at the data, on its own, we might be missing kind of the broader context, right? So if you're only looking at the data, which represents a subset of the truth, you might be making the wrong decision. Then, kind of more broadly, who owns your personal data? So right now we saw that a bunch of different companies will have a piece of this data. They're using it to monetize other services. In the US, there's no comprehensive law that covers your personal data. I think in Europe there is a little bit more strict policy around that. But in the US we have things like HIPAA and the FCRA, which will govern specific subsets of personal data, but there's nothing kind of broadly looking across all of your data. And there's an enormous value that can be monetized by business. So there was a study done in 2011 which estimated the value, and this is just in Europe, at $72 billion, just basically capitalizing on individuals' data. So we've seen kind of a couple of things happen in the US, like in 2013 there was this Right to Know Act in California, which would potentially require every business that captures data to make that available back to the consumers. Obviously there was a huge backlash from this. Google and Facebook, they basically told them it was prohibitive, it was impossible for them to do that. So there's been some back and forth, but no real progress yet in the US on this. And so that leaves us the question of what's going to happen in the future. Some industry leaders like Ken Anderson, who worked with Intel on the study, thinks that just like the mainframes kind of move towards the personal computer, our data will move towards kind of personal ownership. But that's just one opinion. And as we saw in the previous slide, right now businesses really are the ones controlling that information. That's it. Questions?
It's funny you mentioned the sort of the end there of the personalization of data. I mean, that's having Chris Resendez last week. That was his basic kind of one of his key takeaways was eventually you will come to the point where you own your data, and you can monetize that. You can offer that data out in return for services. So. Questions?
All right.
Thanks.